This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. We've got a great show lined up for you today, my friends, so let's just jump right into it. Joining me on the line right now is John Carpay. He is the president and founder of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. This is a legal advocacy group who has been fighting on behalf of Canadians. They've been focusing on defending constitutional freedoms through litigation and education. And he has a team of lawyers who have been working for a number of years now on a number of cases dealing with free expression, equality, and challenges to government overreach, like what we all experienced during COVID-19, 84, as I like to call it. Now, I'm sure a lot of viewers of this channel are well aware of the term rules for thee, but not for me. Well, the reason why we all started saying that is because we all started seeing a great deal of hypocrisy coming from these politicians and public officials who were rigorously enforcing these COVID rules while actually ignoring them themselves. So in 2021, John was motivated to investigate the conduct of some of these people, including Manitoba's premier, the chief health officer, and also the chief justice during COVID, because there were rumors swirling around at the time that some of these people may have been violating the very public orders that they were enforcing. So in 2021, John ended up hiring a private investigator to monitor these officials. And this is something that I would suggest falls directly into the category of a legitimate pursuit of the public's right to know. But the Manitoba Law Society certainly didn't think so. They ended up prosecuting John, and he was fined $5,000, which he paid. Now, all of this happened 2 years ago. You fast forward now to just 2 days ago, and the Alberta Law Society has just issued this following notice. This is a notice of disbarment. It says on September 2nd, 2025, a hearing committee of the Law Society of Alberta ordered John Carpay disbarred, effective immediately. At the time of the disbarment, Mr. Carpay was a suspended member of the Law Society of Alberta. The hearing committee sanctioned Mr. Carpay for the following conduct: failing to discharge all his responsibilities to his clients, tribunals, the public, and other members of the profession honorably and with integrity. The hearing committee also ordered that Mr. Carpay pay a cost in the amount of $7,457.50. The full written decision of the hearing committee is posted to the Law Society of Alberta. So John, thank you so much for taking some time to break this down for us here today on Press for Truth. To me, this seems like it's political prosecution because, you know, they already dealt with this 2 years ago, and now they're bringing this up again, maybe in an attempt to set a precedent for anybody who dares to challenge the status quo or who dares to attempt to expose potential corruption within the government. So I'd love to hear about this from the horse's mouth. Maybe you could start us off, though, with just what is the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms? Why did you start it? And how did all of this lead to the point of you being disbarred from the Law Society of Alberta?
So the Justice Center was founded 15 years ago to defend the charter rights and freedoms of Canadians. We have a team of lawyers across Canada that we fund, and we were in the trenches fighting for freedoms of conscience and religion and the right of parents to raise and educate their own children as they deem best, not necessarily how political activists might want the kids to be indoctrinated. And so we accidentally, as it turned out, we tripled in size when the governments introduced the lockdowns in 2020. And you've probably heard the saying, the hardest thing about the 2 weeks to flatten the curve has been the past 3 years. You know, these things just dragged on and on. And we were the only civil liberties organization in Canada that called for an end to lockdowns. There were other civil liberties groups that took exception to some of the rules, and they said, well, some of these rules have gone a bit too far. But fundamentally, they were not opposed to the whole project of violating massively the charter rights and freedoms of all Canadians. And so, as the only civil liberties group to call for an end to lockdowns, we tripled in size. We became far more prominent. And so we had lawyers in court suing governments from British Columbia into Atlantic Canada, challenging lockdowns, challenging vaccine passports, challenging travel mandates. We were the first group in Canada to file a court application against the mandatory use of the ArriveCan app, which many people will remember as apart from being ineffective and useless and dysfunctional, it was also a violation of constitutional rights and freedoms to require people to use this particular device. So after we filed our court action, the government suspended the policy. We sued the federal government on behalf of former Newfoundland Premier Brian Peckford, who was one of the last living signatory to the charter signed in 1982. That was sadly and wrongfully dismissed as moot by a court. Today, we are providing, we have lawyers for Chris Barber. The Democracy Fund is funding lawyers for Tamara Leach. So we're working hand in hand. And so we've defended many Canadians who were wrongfully charged with criminal conduct for their peaceful participation in the peaceful Freedom Convoy in Ottawa in February of 2022. We also participated in the court action that led to a declaration that Prime Minister Trudeau acted illegally when he declared that a peaceful protest in Ottawa constituted a national emergency. So we contributed to that. So we've become very high profile. And as you mentioned, in 2021, I was disgusted by the hypocrisy. In Alberta, for example, we saw the Premier, Jason Kenney, his government is locking pastors up in jail for violating COVID rules. And then we see the disgusting spectacle of the Premier violating COVID rules by dining with his cabinet ministers at this fancy Sky Palace restaurant. So the surveillance arose from there. The Law Society of Alberta expressly, I've got the letter in front of me, they delegated the disciplinary proceedings to Manitoba. They said the Law Society of Alberta will not be taking any steps in relation to your complaint. This is written to somebody that filed a complaint. So we're not taking any steps. Our file will be closed. The information you have provided will be forwarded to the Law Society of Manitoba for consideration as part of their ongoing investigation. So this is in 2021. They delegated it to Manitoba. I faced 2 years of disciplinary proceedings before the Law Society of Manitoba. I was punished. I paid $5,000. I was subjected to a lifetime ban on practicing law in Manitoba. So after that whole thing was over and done with, I resigned from the Law Society of Alberta, to which they said, oh no, we're not accepting your resignation. We're going to prosecute you again over the exact same thing, this surveillance of the judge. We're going to prosecute you again because we want to disbar you. And now finally, 2 years after, more than 2 years after this was delegated to Manitoba, I've got the Law Society of Alberta publicly announcing that they wanted to disbar me. And by the way, they announced that to the public before they notified me or my lawyer, which says a lot about their attitude and standards of professionalism. They should have properly alerted myself or my lawyer to the fact that they were going to release this decision at, 4 p.m. Tuesday or 11 minutes past 4 p.m. on Tuesday. They didn't even notify my lawyer or myself. They told the whole world first, and I found out about it secondhand from friends of mine who got the notice. So.
And now they want to charge you $7,500 after you've already were charged $5,000 for the exact same supposed crime. I mean, how can they issue a fine twice for the same thing?
Well, they shouldn't be prosecuting over the same thing twice, and that's a well-established principle in law. How they weasel out of that is they say, well, in criminal law, you've got a prohibition against double jeopardy. Right. So if you're prosecuted once for whether it's shoplifting or murder, once you're prosecuted for a crime, you're going to be convicted or acquitted, and that's it. It's over. And you can't prosecute somebody over the same thing again after they've been acquitted or convicted. So that's in criminal law. So the Law Society of Alberta says, well, our prosecution of John Carpay is not criminal law. Therefore, this principle of double jeopardy doesn't apply to us. We can do whatever we want. And that it's very arrogant because it ignores the inherent unfairness. It's technically true. These are not criminal proceedings. I don't have a criminal record just because the Alberta Law Society doesn't want me as a member. But there's an underlying principle of fairness which they are violating. And again, the letter that they said, the Law Society of Alberta will not be taking any steps. Our file will be closed. It's pretty clear language.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to set a message here. Like I said, a precedent in order to maybe scare future people from being able to do the types of stuff that you do. Like you said, you were the only civil liberties group in Canada who were willing to kind of become that thorn in their side. So now they're starting to stab back. So, I mean, do you think they could be potentially trying to scare other people off from challenging the status quo, from, going head up against them? And are they hoping you'll be the first domino to fall or something?
Well, I have not been actively practicing law for a long time. The last time that I was in court on behalf of a client was in 2015. That was 10 years ago. And my work with the Justice Center is writing and public advocacy, public speaking, media interviews, fundraising, management, administration. I do everything except I don't practice law. Like I'm not in court on behalf of clients. So, which is why I resigned in 2023. After this Manitoba business was all concluded and I've been punished there, I resigned from the Alberta Law Society, which is the only one that I was a member of. And I don't need to be a member of the Law Society to advocate for truth and justice and freedom through the Justice Center. And we have lawyers all over Canada that are fighting for charter rights and freedoms, and they're certainly not intimidated by the Alberta Law Society or any other law society. One of the files, in fact, is an Alberta lawyer is suing the Alberta Law Society because it's imposing this woke political indoctrination course on all Alberta lawyers. They must all take this very political course called The Path, and it's all about decolonization. And the message is kind of if you're uh, African, Asian, European, if you're non-Aboriginal, you should be pretty ashamed of yourself, and you probably shouldn't be here. It's kind of it's this political. If you don't take that course in Alberta, you cannot practice law in Alberta. So this is how woke and political the Alberta Law Society is. They actually force lawyers to take this political course, and the Law Society of Alberta is getting sued by an Alberta lawyer over this. So if law societies think that they're succeeding in intimidating lawyers, it's not working.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is not going to be pushed around, and it's certainly, as it sounds like, not really going to be affected by this at all. But having said that, are you still looking into potentially appealing this or, fighting this in any way?
Yeah, I'm in discussions with my lawyer. I did retain counsel, of course, right? Because there's an old saying that a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. It's just very foolish. Like you need to get a lawyer. It's like a doctor too. You could self-diagnose a minor thing like a cold, but if you think it's a major issue, even if you're a medical doctor, you should go see another doctor for the sake of the objectivity. Anyway, so I'm in discussions with my lawyer about appealing it. There would be an appeal process within the Law Society itself, as far as I know. So we would not be going to court at this stage. I don't know if we would in future or not, but you first have to follow through the internal appeals process. So it looks like we'll probably be appealing this ruling to the next level within the Law Society process.
Yeah, good call. I mean, it's important to show that, you're not going to be pushed around in these types of ways, especially, after they've done this multiple times and they're trying to send a message here. But, you won't be pushed around, and that's fantastic. Again, I'm glad to hear that the JCCF is going to continue doing what they're doing because the work has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just yesterday, there was a report released in terms of COVID. That one is called New report exposes COVID policy failures and rising unexplained deaths. This is the kind of stuff that the society, that the JCCF has been doing. What can you tell us about this new report that just came? I don't know if it's coincidentally or what, but one day after you were disbarred.
Yeah. So just a few examples of what's in the report, and it's on our website. We've put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it. We're using Statistics Canada data. So anybody who disagrees with our report, I would say you're welcome to disagree, but you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and do some hard work and go digging into the Stats Canada data yourself if you think that we are presenting it unfairly or inaccurately. But we're using the government's data as we always have been since lockdowns were imposed on us in 2020. We've been using government data, and the government data doesn't support the government's policies. So just a few examples. The one I found the most interesting was that the COVID deaths went up after everybody got vaccinated. Not everybody, but 80% of Canadians, 95% of Canadians over 70, after everybody got injected with COVID vaccine, according to Statistics Canada, the number of COVID deaths went up from about 16,000 in 2020 to 20,000 in 2022 after everybody got the jab. Another interesting thing was that COVID, the total number of deaths in Canada rose to an all-time high in 2022 after everybody got vaccinated. The deaths were up far higher than in COVID's first year, 2020, before people got injected. This is especially pronounced in Canadians under 45. The deaths among younger Canadians, so ages 1 to 44, these deaths are up 36% higher than previously. Again, after the vaccine was made mandatory, after everybody got injected, you got this higher death rate amongst Canadians that are under 45. This is and 99% of those deaths are not from COVID, right? So COVID deaths were not a huge contributor for deaths among Canadians under the age of 45. The last 2 points briefly, 55% increase in drug overdose deaths from pre-lockdowns to post-lockdowns, and they've stayed high. It's horrible. So, right, imagine that 55% increase. So we went from about 4,500 drug overdose deaths per year pre-lockdowns to 7,000 drug overdose deaths, lockdowns, and continuing to this day. 20% increase in alcohol-induced deaths. So, I mean, go figure, the government locks us down. We have a big increase in alcohol consumption driven by the lockdown caused loneliness, isolation, despair, anxiety, depression. And so we get a 20% increase, 27% increase in younger Canadians, but a 20% increase in alcohol-induced deaths. So Statistics Canada is telling us that all these horrible things happened after the vaccines were rolled out, not after COVID, after the vaccine rollout. That's where things got really bad. Does that prove that lockdowns and vaccines led to higher deaths? Short answer, no, it doesn't prove it, in a scientific way or before a court of law. It does suggest, though, that the public health officials should be given this a hard, serious look. And they should stop their false narratives that lockdowns were wonderful and lockdowns saved lives. The data does not support their narrative.
So here we have deaths increasing after the vaccines, and we know, as you said, a lot of this stuff isn't actually coming from COVID. In fact, when they were attributing death numbers to COVID, these are people who were at the same time suffering from other comorbidities, cancers, other kind of diseases. You could have been in a motorcycle accident and in the hospital for that. And if you happen to die while you just tested positive for COVID, oh, well, it's another check one up for the COVID deaths. And, when we're looking at the lockdown situation, here you have, as you suggested, drug use going up, alcohol use going up. Meanwhile, every store was shut down except for, the liquor stores, but churches were banned. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like adding to the psychological issues that society was having when you're not allowed to go to church, but you're free to go out to the liquor store and buy as much booze as you want. I mean, what does that say about the government's leadership here?
Well, in British Columbia, and the Justice Centre has been involved in a number of court cases in BC, and at no point in time has the British Columbia government or Bonnie Henry specifically have they provided any evidence to support their policy of shutting down churches. There's just zero evidence that churches were somehow contributing to COVID deaths. The other thing that the report includes is just how the World Health Organization in April of 2020 developed a new cause of death classification protocol in April 2020 for COVID. And the World Health Organization's protocol said that if COVID was suspected to be the cause, it could be listed as a COVID death. If COVID had contributed, it would be a COVID death. If there is a similar illness and there is no other clear explanation for it not being COVID, then it would be a COVID death. Now, this was adopted by every province in Canada. It was adopted all over the world. And so, I remember in 2020, a lot of people would say, oh, but the number of COVID deaths is way higher than the annual flu deaths, which is true, the numbers that the governments were reporting, but the protocol was different because in 2020 and onwards, if you were terminally ill with cancer and then they tested you for COVID, even if you weren't sick with COVID, but if you had a PCR test showing that there's some COVID viral remnant in your body, you'd be listed as a COVID death. That was not the protocol that was used in 2019 and the years private. If you were terminally ill with cancer and you got a really bad flu, and the flu kind of pushed you over the edge and, was sort of the immediate cause of death, the government death statistics would still have you down as a cancer death because you were terminally ill with cancer. They wouldn't put it down as a flu death. In 2020, the World Health Organization changed the protocol. So we got, sorry, that's a little bit long-winded, but this is how we get these huge COVID numbers, COVID death numbers, COVID case numbers. It's because of that brand new protocol. Now, if you want to try to find a vaccine death, like a death caused by the COVID vaccine, it's a polar opposite. It's like you have to prove and demonstrate that it had to have been the vaccine because there's no other explanation possible, right? So it's two completely different standards. For COVID, it's like, well, if you did if it looked like they had COVID-like symptoms and there wasn't a clear other explanation, and if it was assumed to be COVID, anything goes, just put it down as a COVID death, right? It's a very low threshold. To find a vaccine, a death caused by the COVID vaccine, it's a completely different protocol. It's like you've got to prove that it couldn't have been caused by anything else. Right. So two very different standards. I'm not even saying which one's better, right? But you're not applying the same standard should be used for both, and it's not.
Meanwhile, they laid down a blanket rule that anybody who was unvaccinated, like myself, weren't even able to fly out of the country. I was literally a prisoner in my own country for a little while there because I couldn't get on an airplane if I was unvaccinated. In fact, it got to the point where I wasn't even allowed to travel outside of British Columbia, my own province. Obviously, I challenged that. I made a video titled "How to Beat a COVID Checkpoint with Press for Truth." But these are the kinds of things that we have to expose, and I think reports like the ones that you guys just put out yesterday, and the great work you've been doing over the last 5 years during COVID, may have something to do with why a target has been placed over you and why they're recently, going after you with this disbarment. So I guess just to kind of sum it up, what are your kind of final thoughts on all of this, because it did seem to coincide with one another. You know, you released the report, you were disbarred. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like, are they, you know, attempting to silence people like you moving forward, maybe in preparation for the next pandemic?
I mean, look, I can't really look too much into the hearts and minds of, you can see what people do, but then once you start to talk about why are they doing that, now you're kind of, you could be skating on thin ice. It's a little bit of speculation. I do see an appalling lack of integrity when you've got the Law Society of Alberta saying, we're not taking any steps. Our file will be closed. We're going to forward everything to the Law Society of Manitoba. The Law Society of Manitoba is assuming responsibilities for the disciplinary proceedings. Is very clear language that they wrote to a complainant, and I was copied on the letter, and then to so over a period of 2 years, I spent $50,000 of my own money on legal bills for which I didn't do any fundraising. I paid that myself for the Manitoba Law Society disciplinary proceedings. I get punished in Manitoba. And then they do this bait and switch, and all of a sudden it's, oh, well, we're going to prosecute you and disbar you. And then that takes them, the better part of 2 years to do that, right? So they take their own sweet time because the process is the punishment. They drag things out. So it's pretty vindictive. Are they trying to intimidate other lawyers? I won't speak to that, but if they are, it's not working. We've got lawyers all across Canada that are standing up for truth and fighting for freedom in the courts. So we're not going to be intimidated by the Alberta Law Society or any other law society in Canada.
I absolutely love that you're not going to allow them to push you guys around, and that the JCCF is just going to continue marching forward with the same old things that you guys have been doing for over a decade now. So that's fantastic. Is there anywhere that people should be contributing to support you? I mean, moving forward, $50,000 is a lot of money, or would you have them, rather donate to the JCCF? What would you prefer, where people can maybe financially support the work that you and the JCCF is doing?
I I invite people to donate to the Justice Center, and I should clarify the Justice Center in the past 4 years, right? Because it's been going on a long time. At no time has the Justice Center paid for any of my legal bills. I've paid for that personally. Other parts of it, like the proceedings with the Alberta Law Society, I've received donations from friends to help me pay the current round of legal bills, but none of it's being paid for by the Justice Center. And if people want to support the Justice Center's work to defend freedom, go to our website, www.jccf, so that's Justice Center Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca. And we are a registered charity, and we provide a tax receipt to anybody who donates to our work. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I strongly encourage the viewers to do that. Make a contribution if you haven't already. I will include links for that in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Once again, John, thank you so much for taking the time today to break all of this down for us.
Thanks for having me on your show. I look forward to the next time.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What a great interview with John Carpay, a man who truly deserves our support because of all the work he's been doing on behalf of Canadians. He's also been working on behalf of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, who in their own right have been doing great things, especially during the COVID 1984 era. And if Canada continues to go the way that it's going, I think we may need some of their help in the future as well. So be sure you check out those links in the description. And guys, if you do appreciate my efforts here at Press for Truth to constantly bring you this type of information, I need your support as well. If you would like to make a contribution, you can check out the Give, Send, Go campaign that I have linked in the description, or you can go to pressfortruth.ca/donate. Thank you so much to anybody who makes a contribution. I truly cannot do this work without the support that comes directly from you, the viewers. So that's all for today, guys. Make sure you click that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Be sure to share this one with your friends and family who you think need to see it the most. And stay tuned, guys. I'm going to have more video reports coming soon, God willing. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.